I think it is just about time to get started. So I want to thank you all for joining. Continue introducing yourself, please. And we'll go ahead and get started in just a moment here. See the folks continuing to sign on. It's so great to have you here. We have greetings from Tel Aviv. Welcome. Great. Well, with that, we can officially begin. So welcome to everyone, and you can continue introducing yourself. I'm Sapna Shah. I've met many of you. I'm the Managing Director at the Global Impact Investing Network, or GIIN. And I am so pleased to welcome you back to Next Normal Now, our signature series of virtual events for 2021, designed to highlight systemic change unfolding around the world in the here and now. Today's event, the second of 3 such convenings, is focused on climate action. Among us today, we have newcomers to this topic, be they students, investors, or those who are just curious to learn more. But many of the hundreds of delegates attending from around the world are already deeply embedded in climate-related work. And we will be all learning from some of these sophisticated practitioners today. And I want to thank them in advance for sharing their expertise with all of us. Even in this virtual setting, the GIIN would love for you and us to be able to connect. So please do use the chat function to make your comments throughout today's session. And when you do that, remember to select all panelists and attendees so that we can all see what you have to say. If you experience any technical issues, please reach out to my colleague, Arjun Reddy. He's today's tech lead. You can reach him by selecting panelists only from the drop-down menu in the chat function, and what you type will be directed to him. All of us at the GIIN are incredibly proud to bring you today's event focused on climate action. For those of you who are unfamiliar with us, the GIIN is the global champion of impact investing, an industry that invests to generate measurable, positive social and environmental benefit alongside a financial return. Our worldwide network is made up of more than 35,000 individuals and over 350 member organizations from 50 countries. The impact investing industry is growing quickly, but as we all know, the issues we seek to address are growing far more quickly. At the GIIN, we envision a world where finance plays a central role in solving big global challenges like the climate crisis and serves all members of society. We believe that impact investing is a glimmer of that future happening in the here and now, but there are other examples too. For that future, however, to become a widespread reality, our global economic system needs fundamental change. We need systemic change. And that's why today's event is so important. Today's event is focused on actions that we must take together right now to protect our planet and its people. So before we kick off today, I'd like to take a minute to thank Chemonics, Jonathan Rose Companies, KPMG, Responsibility, Treehouse Investments, Wellington Management, and Impact Alpha for their generous support in making today's event possible. So with that in mind, let's begin. I am so pleased to introduce the founder and CEO of the GIIN, my colleague, a leading voice in the push to transform the global economic system in ways to allow people and planet to thrive, Amit Bouri. Over to you, Amit.
Thank you, Sapna, and welcome to our Next Normal Now delegates from around the world. Today's event on climate action has hundreds of attendees logging in from 6 continents. We have truly global representation to pursue action against a crisis that is truly global in nature. The climate emergency is not only the greatest challenge of our generation, it is possibly the greatest challenge humanity will ever face. The changes happening to our planet threaten every aspect of our global community, our farms and our forests, our health, and our habitats. There is no issue that calls for more innovation, collaboration, and disciplined action than climate change. We all feel its effects, regardless of our nationality, our socioeconomic status, our ethnicity, or our faith. It is both universal and personal. But we also know that the poor and marginalized will be impacted most by a changing climate. So addressing this crisis is also critical to driving broader social equity. This challenge will require leadership and action from each and every one of us together. And so leadership and action are the focus of today's event. To be sure, there are signs that the global community is beginning to recognize the emergency we face. We've seen an explosion of net zero carbon commitments from major international companies. That includes names like Unilever, Nestle, and American Airlines. In parallel, we see a big shift in priorities among investors, for whom net zero is an increasingly prominent investment goal. At the national level, the Paris Climate Agreement united nearly 200 countries in the race to limit global warming to manageable levels. The agreement is the most important international treaty on this issue, and the United States is again engaged. But 5.5 years after it was signed, not a single major developed economy is on track to meet its climate targets. And all those emission reduction commitments, they are essential, but insufficient. Every modeling projection, every scenario of the future tells us that it is not enough to simply stop adding carbon to our already strained atmosphere. That won't come close to accomplishing what we need. Instead, we must find more ways to become carbon negative, to remove carbon from the atmosphere in ways that we've never done before. Our global status quo is clearly unsustainable, and the status quo of our climate response is just not enough. So what would a different future look like for the global community gathered here today? In our next normal, we must be thinking bigger. We must move far more capital into climate solutions, the solutions which move beyond minimizing harm, beyond just reducing the amount of damage we cause. We need to invest in solutions that create scalable climate improvement. We need to be actually making things better. 3 investing frontiers offer tremendous promise as we shift toward that paradigm of climate action. All 3 frontiers offer the promise of impact and scale beyond what we can clearly imagine today. They represent opportunities for both urgent, immediate progress and long-term durability. First, we need more investment in renewable forms of energy. Renewables are clearly gaining traction in many parts of the world, but we need to be pressing for sustainable energy sources to become adopted and integrated everywhere. We need clean energy to be accessible for all people. Second, we need more investment in climate technologies, the novel advancements that will accelerate the emissions reductions and even pull carbon from our atmosphere with enough speed and scale to move the needle. These technologies will take time to test and launch, but if we want to rely on them in the future, we must prioritize investment in that innovation today. But renewables and new technology alone aren't sufficient. So third, we need more investment in natural capital solutions. With greater capital allocations, we can make sustainable forms of forestry and agriculture the dominant approach to land management. Such approaches, which sequester more carbon in the ground, embrace the world's natural capacity to assist us in restoring the planet. But they will only take hold if our society changes. Our communities will need to evolve a more harmonious relationship with nature. We will need to shift from a model of depletion and extraction to one of regeneration. Impact investors must help pioneer these vital frontiers. To generate progress at a sufficient pace, our world will need investors providing patient and risk-tolerant catalytic capital. It will need blended financing structures that crowd in different types of investment. It will need massive investments in taking solutions to global scale. It will need investors paying as much attention to their contributions toward environmental progress as they do to their financial return. In short, the world needs a lot more of what impact investing has to offer. As you move through today's agenda, I want to caution against narrow thinking. Too often, society dangles before us the idea of a single solution to the climate emergency. One day it's solar energy, the next it's corporate engagement, then it's sustainable urban farms. The tantalizing idea of a single magic bullet is appealing, but it is an empty promise. The truth is this: the urgency of our climate crisis requires us to be pressing toward all these climate actions at the same time. Businesses must reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. Big corporations must join the fight. Development of new climate technologies must speed up. And we must be better stewards of our lands and oceans, and on and on. The crisis requires every approach we can muster, and that includes fundamental change to our global economic system. And ultimately, it's not just about climate and carbon. In the long run, we're building toward a sustainable society that thrives alongside nature, toward an economy that exists in harmony with our natural systems. So how can our next normal community of leaders take urgent action towards that vision? For those in our audience today who are not professional investors, consider this. The entirety of our economic lives has a profound impact on the world around us, including on our planet and climate. Many conscious consumers start by reflecting on the products they buy, but changing consumption alone won't be enough. The full scope of our environmental impacts can also connect back to where we work, what we do with our time, and how we invest. We need to be actively aligning all of our money with our values. And we need to be inspiring others to seek positive climate impact through how they earn, save, spend, and invest their money. That is how you can multiply the influence of this movement. For the investors here today, the message is equally clear. Every investor must be taking climate action. In 2021, we are all climate investors because the climate emergency is having an impact on everything else. Just as every business is being forced to manage its climate risks, every allocation of capital must be viewed through the lens of its impact on our climate. At the same time, we cannot have environmental sustainability without progressing social equity. Thinking about climate in isolation won't be enough. Every climate investor also needs to be thinking about their other impacts as well. Impacts on issues of inclusion, of racial equity, of gender equity, of creating opportunities for all people in marginalized communities. This holistic approach raises the bar for all investments. It establishes a new way of doing business, and it reflects a fundamental shift in how we view the role of capital in society. If there were ever a leadership moment for those of us thinking differently about the power of finance as a force for good, this is it. Let's take action in this urgent moment together.
Thank you, Amit. It certainly is an urgent moment and a moment of leadership opportunity for those of us in this community that are thinking differently about the power of finance. In fact, as we face the daunting challenge of the climate crisis, it's clear that we must be changing people's thinking about in many ways, and that includes our own, about the way we invest our money, of course, but also our consumption, our habits, and our personal responsibility to the planet. There is perhaps no better way to change mindsets than through a powerful and inspiring story. And over the past 20 years, there has been one particular story that has motivated climate action like no other. To tell us more, here is Holly Gordon, Chief Impact Officer at Participant, the movie company dedicated to creating entertainment that inspires people to take part in positive social change. Thank you, Holly.
Hi, everybody. Our company Participant was founded in 2004 by Jeff Skoll, based on a simple belief that a good story, well told, can change the world. And since then, our work has centered on a union of art and activism, a combination that we have seen to be uniquely powerful in driving change. Storytelling is at the heart of what we do. Stories you may have heard of, like Spotlight or Roma, Dark Waters. Created by a diverse range of artists, our stories highlight everyday people who have the courage to stand up and speak truth to power, like Polly Murray, Malala, Rob Bilott, or Chairman Fred Hampton. Through our impact campaigns, we connect our artists' stories to activists who are leading change on today's most pressing issues. So you might be wondering, what brings me here to your climate action convening? Well, 15 years ago, almost to the day, shortly after our company was founded, we released one such story, a seminal film that was part thriller, part love story, and 100% a call to action in a sort of inconvenient way. Ultimately, it is a film about betrayal and a film about truth. This film not only set the trajectory for our company, but also the trajectory for the way we, as citizens of the planet, think about climate change as an issue. An Inconvenient Truth underscored the urgency of climate change and asked every single one of us how we would each participate in addressing the perils of our warming planet. You all understand that urgency as well as anyone, but it's worth taking a moment to pause and reflect on the timeline. 15 years ago. 15 years since An Inconvenient Truth told a story that energized citizens around the world to demand change. It's really hard to measure the transformational impact that this one film had. A whole generation of climate activists were born, including perhaps some of you, spurred to action by the story Vice President Al Gore shared in his now infamous PowerPoint. I call this the dandelion effect, and is the secret to why content can be such a powerful tool for change. If you hold a dandelion in front of a fan, seeds fly everywhere, and they're planted far and wide. And in time, those tiny seeds germinate, and new flowers spring forth for many seasons to come. And since then, this dandelion effect has become even more powerful. We are now vastly interconnected, which means stories and the change that follows can travel farther and wider, more quickly than ever before. So we must tell more stories to fuel the climate action movement today and highlight its intersectionality with other movements, movements for economic justice, racial equity, and environmental justice. We need more stories to create the enabling environment for movement leaders like all of you so that you can do more quickly to protect our planet. So much progress has been made in 15 years, and yet more work is ahead. At Participant, we're committed to telling stories that will speed our progress. Stories to protect the planet, stories to help us redesign our world for equity, and stories that will help us transform institutions for good. We look forward to partnering with all of you in the years to come around powerful storytelling. And with that, I'd like to take you on a trip down memory lane by reintroducing you to the trailer for An Inconvenient Truth. My hope is that it inspires you to redouble your efforts toward creating a more sustainable world of peace and prosperity for all. Let's roll the trailer.
If you look at the 10 hottest years ever measured, they've all occurred in the last 14 years. And the hottest of all was 2005. The scientific consensus is that we are causing global warming. I am Al Gore. I used to be the next president of the United States of America. This is Patagonia 75 years ago and the same glacier today. This is Mount Kilimanjaro 30 years ago and last year. Within the decade, there will be no more snows of Kilimanjaro. This is really not a political issue so much as a moral issue. The temperature increases are taking place all over the world, and that's causing stronger storms.
This is the biggest crisis in the history of this country.
Early this morning, Hurricane Katrina slammed into New Orleans.
Is it possible that we should prepare against other threats besides terrorists?
From Paramount Classics comes a film that has shocked audiences everywhere they've seen it.
The Arctic is experiencing faster melting. If this were to go, sea level worldwide would go up 20 feet. This is what would happen in Florida. Around Shanghai, home to 40 million people. The area around Calcutta, 60 million. Here's Manhattan. The World Trade Center Memorial would be underwater. Think of the impact of a couple 100,000 refugees, and then imagine 100 million. We have to act together to solve this global crisis. Our ability to live is what is at stake.
Wow, thank you, Holly. That film, An Inconvenient Truth, is certainly as powerful and terrifying of a dandelion now as it was when it was first released. And it reminds us how urgent our situation is. It's now time for us to move into our breakout sessions. These are the spaces where we translate these big, bold climate goals into practice and tactics. As you can see on our agenda, we have divided the breakout sessions thematically. Number 1, net zero portfolio approaches. Number 2, nature-based climate solutions. Number 3, technology-based climate solutions. Number 4, scaling institutional impact investments through catalytic structures. And number 5, introduction to impact investing. It's important for me to say that you do not have to choose just one. We invite you to move back and forth, trying out different rooms, because there is something here for everyone. Now, in order for these breakout rooms to work for everyone, please listen closely for some technical instructions. Today, we are using 2 different Zoom tools for our event. This space where we are together is a Zoom tool called Zoom Webinar. The breakout sessions, however, will use a different tool called Zoom Meetings, which will open a new window on your screen. You can find these separate Zoom meeting links in the session agenda or paste it in the chat box now with a different link for each breakout session. Just click the links for the sessions you want to join. The breakout sessions will last 50 minutes, and when they end, we will all return to this main Zoom webinar setting for an inspiring fireside chat between the GIIN CEO, Amit Bouri, and one of the leading voices in the global faith community demanding climate action, Cardinal Peter Turkson. To come back here when your breakout sessions end, please use the link provided in your registration email. Please keep that link handy so you can come back to the full group for the exciting second part of our program. Enjoy the breakout sessions. I will too, and I will see you back here in 50 minutes. Thank you.